In the bustling heart of Sao Paulo, where skyscrapers pierced the smoggy sky like defiant spears, Eduardo Vargas paced the marble floors of his penthouse suite. The millionaire entrepreneur, once hailed as a visionary in renewable energy, now faced the unraveling of his empire. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Eduardo's hands trembled as he clutched a crumpled letter from his lawyer, embezzlement charges, fabricated by rivals who envied his success. He had built his fortune from nothing, a street kid turned tycoon through sheer grit, but now, at 52, he stood on the precipice of ruin. The police were en route, tipped off by anonymous sources planting false evidence in his company's servers. Eduardo glanced at the clock, 10 minutes until they breached the lobby. Little did he know, salvation lurked in the unlikeliest of places, embodied by Maria, the faxinera who had quietly scrubbed his world clean for years. Maria Oliveira had immigrated from a small village in rural Brazil, where the Amazon's whispers still echoed in her dreams. At 45, she was a widow with 3 children to feed, her calloused hands bearing the scars of endless labor. She wasn't just a cleaner, she was the invisible thread holding together the chaos of Eduardo's life. Every morning at dawn, she arrived at his opulent apartment, dusting shelves lined with awards, mopping floors that reflected the city's glittering lights, and occasionally overhearing snippets of his high-stakes calls. Maria never pried, her philosophy was simple: do your work with heart, and kindness would find its way back. But on this fateful day, as she polished the grand oak desk in his study, something caught her eye, a hidden drawer, slightly ajar, revealing a stack of documents that didn't belong. Her heart raced, she knew she shouldn't look, but an inner voice, perhaps the spirit of her late husband, urged her on. Eduardo's rise to wealth had been meteoric. Born in the favelas, he scavenged for scraps until a chance encounter with a mentor ignited his passion for solar technology. By 30, he founded Vargas Renewables, turning Brazil's abundant sunshine into power for the underserved. Millions benefited, villages lit up, jobs created, but success bred enemies. Rival corporations, threatened by his affordable innovations, orchestrated a smear campaign. They hacked his systems, planting digital trails of fraud that led straight to him. Eduardo fought back in court, but the evidence mounted, and now the federal police were closing in. As he poured himself a final scotch, staring out at the sprawling metropolis he once conquered, a knock echoed at the door. Not the police yet, too soft. It was Maria, her mop bucket in tow, eyes wide with urgency. "Senor Vargas," she whispered, her voice laced with the lilting accent of her northeastern roots, "I think I found something you need to see." Reluctance gripped Eduardo. Who was this woman, really? He'd seen her countless times, polite nods in the hallway, a quiet bohemia, but never truly noticed her. In his world of boardrooms and billions, the help was background noise. Yet, in this moment of desperation, he waved her in. Maria hesitated, her simple cotton dress contrasting sharply with the room's luxury. She pulled out a folder from her apron pocket, its edges worn. "I was cleaning your study last week," she explained, her words tumbling out like a confession. "The drawer, it opened by accident. These papers, they show transfers from your competitors to a hacker. Names, dates, everything. I didn't understand at first, but I watched the news. They're framing you, senor." Eduardo's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Was this a trap? Another layer of deceit? But as he scanned the documents, emails, bank statements, irrefutable proof, realization dawned. This wasn't forgery, it was the smoking gun he'd prayed for. Flashback to Maria's life: orphan young, she married at 18, only to lose her husband to a factory accident. Migrating to the city with her kids, she took any job, scrubbing floors in high-rises while dreaming of a better future. Kindness was her armor, she'd slip extra food to homeless kids on her way home, share stories with elderly neighbors. One evening, overhearing Eduardo's heated call about the scandal, she pieced together the puzzle. The documents she found weren't random, they were planted by a disgruntled employee, but overlooked in the chaos. Maria could have ignored them, sold them to tabloids for a fortune that would change her life. Instead, she hid them, waiting for the right moment. Why? Because years ago, when her youngest son fell ill with dengue, Eduardo, unbeknownst to her, had anonymously covered the hospital bills after hearing her plea to the building manager. A small act, forgotten by him, but etched in her soul. One kindness begets another, her grandmother used to say. As Eduardo absorbed the proof, the sirens grew deafening. The elevator dinged in the hallway, police ascending. His lawyer was on speed dial, but time was slipping away. "Why help me?" he asked Maria, voice cracking. She met his gaze, her brown eyes steady. "Because you're not the monster they say. I've seen you late nights working for the poor, not just profit. And because humanity is all we have left in this world." A twist unfolded. Maria revealed she'd photographed the documents on her old phone, emailing copies to trusted journalists just hours before. But in her haste, she'd left digital footprints that could implicate her as an accessory if things went south. She wasn't just saving him, she was risking everything: her job, her freedom, her family's stability. The door burst open. Officers stormed in, badges flashing, handcuffs ready. "Eduardo Vargas, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud." The lead detective, a stern man named Ruiz, barked orders. Eduardo stood tall, but his knees weakened. 10 seconds, that's all he had before the cuffs clicked. In that heartbeat, Maria stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "Wait. Look at this." She thrust her phone into Ruiz's hands, the screen glowing with scan evidence. The room froze. Ruiz scrolled, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock. Calls were made, superiors consulted. The planted evidence unraveled like a cheap thread. Eduardo's rivals were exposed, their scheme backfiring spectacularly. In the emotional climax, as the police retreated, apologizing profusely, Eduardo turned to Maria. Tears streamed down his face, a man unbroken by wealth but humbled by grace. "You saved me," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, senor. Kindness saved us both." In that moment, he realized the true power of humanity not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in quiet acts of selflessness. He embraced her, not as employer to employee, but as equals in the grand tapestry of life. The next day, headlines blared, "Millionaire cleared, cleaning lady's courage exposes corporate conspiracy." Eduardo didn't just walk free, he transformed. He established the Oliveira Foundation, funding education and healthcare for immigrant workers, with Maria as its director. Her children thrived, one becoming a doctor, another an engineer. Ripples of that single act. Years later, Eduardo reflected on that day from his modest home, having downsized his empire to focus on philanthropy. Maria, now a community leader, visited often, sharing laughs over coffee. The story spread across borders, resonating in Spanish-speaking lands from Mexico to Spain, where tales of underdogs triumphing through compassion struck deep chords. It reminded readers that in a world of division, a single selfless gesture could bridge chasms, ignite hope, and prove that true wealth lies in the heart. And so, as the sun set over Sao Paulo, Eduardo whispered to the stars, "Thank you, Maria, for showing me that humanity's light shines brightest in the shadows."